Hey guys, it's Brent and I'm here with Daniel, and we've just finished seeing the 35mm print of Fantasia at the Astor, and we're lucky enough now to be joined by the projectionist who ran the film, Chris Elliott. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into being a projectionist?
It was pretty hit and miss. I sort of started working at a regional cinema about 13 years ago, and through that knew someone who worked at the Nova Cinema in Carlton, and then just commuted from Country Vic to Melbourne every weekend to work, and then eventually ran that for 5 or 6 years. And when they went all digital, was made redundant. Now I'm working here because we're one of the only places running film still.
So I don't know much about how these things happen. How would you, to a noob like me, explain how it works? Because I just assumed before I was shown that by a box that you just walk in and maybe press a button and it's all done. But that was not it.
No, generally films come in reels and they have to be assembled. What we do reel to reel up here at the Astor, so we could technically run straight off the reels, but I make them up into 6,000 foot reels. Other cinemas would make the whole print up onto a platter system, and then it just runs continuously and then rolls back out again.
Why put them in sections? What's the reasoning behind that?
They have to transport it, and to transport it as a complete print, it's probably about 10 foot wide. So, so they to put it into a small box, they just put it into 2,000 foot reels. Generally, 2,000 foot, maybe 2.5. To make my life easier, I put them onto 6,000 foot reels, so that I only have to do two or three changeovers a day.
Okay.
As opposed to 8 or 9. It just sort of limits any issues with me making a human error, gets it out of the way, sort of thing, because you do have to watch and sort of time it properly, and also have to sort of go through and make sure that you've got your stops and starts there ready to go. So yeah, and with the prints that we run, because we run a lot of archive stuff, there's a lot of sort of repairing or maintenance on the prints to be able to be run for a session. So a lot of time goes into just getting them so that they won't crash halfway through the feature.
What's the most extreme repair job you've had to do while you've been at the Astor?
We had a Giro,
the Werner
Herzog film. One of the trunks was stored in a damp area, and one of the reels was covered in mould, and so we had to go through, and it was on the sound. So you have two different sides to the film. So you've got one side with soundtrack, another side that doesn't have the soundtrack. Unfortunately, this was on the soundtrack side, so we had to go and blank out parts of the soundtrack where it basically warped and the whole sound just crackled and distorted. But people generally seemed to like it and wanted to watch it. They didn't get any walkouts. It was unfortunate, but it was only for one reel, and we just made an announcement, and it ran, but it didn't look the greatest for about 20 minutes. It was pretty horrible.
Do you think people who are more interested in, I guess, film and film history, when you say to them, yes, this is an archival print, we might have 20 minutes of a bad patch, they're more forgiving because they like film more than digital? There's a divide there?
There's definitely people that would just come to watch the film running, especially when you're running a film that's maybe 30, 35 years old. There's a lot of history there. Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez released that Grindhouse double, and that had all the scratches. And some people like the scratches, and they like to see the cigar burns and and things like that. I could go either way. But it's definitely, especially when it's something like that, or when the sound's warbling or something like that, you might want to switch to digital.
Fantasia for me is a nostalgic film because of how I grew up. My grandfather played it every time we visited, but there was something also nice about the scratchiness of that, because it sounded like the record of Fantasia that he would play when we weren't watching Fantasia, and there was, I don't know, for Fantasia especially, it's all I can think about right now, but it made it nice.
This session for this showing was very well attended. Why do you think there was such a strong interest when you announced this title?
It's funny, like certain films just have that sort of cachet with people, and things like Fantasia, I don't think it gets run enough. I don't think people get the opportunity to see it in this sort of a setting.
Well, Disney films, it's very rare to be able to actually see a Disney film on the big screen anymore.
Yeah, because Disney do their programming 12 months in advance, and they're really they have a stranglehold over anything that you want to run outside of what they're re-releasing or what they've got available. So when something like this does come up, people do jump on them.
And a film print on top of that.
Yes,
they're even harder to find.
Yes, well, that one came from the National Film and Sound Archive in Canberra, and we've been getting a few prints off them. They've got a lot of access prints that we're allowed to get our hands on, which is quite good. And generally, they're not in too bad condition. There's a couple of other places we get prints from. You're sort of crossing your fingers whenever you open the box, but National Film and Sound Archive are generally pretty good. They're worn, but they're good prints. Organic
film projection has come back into fashion in the last few years. I know that the Sun's fitted out the 70mm projector. The Riverlee's done the same. Mm-hmm. There seems to be a lot of cinemas in Sydney that are doing the same.
IMAX just putting back in their 70.
Yeah. Why do you think there has been? I mean, obviously there's things like The Hateful Eight and all of Christopher Nolan's films, but do you think there is any other, what are the other reasons for people returning to that format?
Well, I think people just generally, with cinema too, I think people love the art form and the work that goes in the prestige of cinema. I think when it fully went all digital, it sort of took some of the shine off, and people did seem to equate it to just watching it at home or downloading it off iTunes. And I think people have developed another appreciation of actually coming to the theatre, watching a film with an audience, and experiencing the film with other people as opposed to just sitting.
It's definitely that sense, when it's on film, it doesn't feel like a made-for-Netflix shot on a digital video camera thing. It really feels like an experience.
And I think too, we're just coming through about 10 years ago, we had that everything had to be in 3D, and I think we've moved away from that now. Not so many 3D releases, a lot of film stuff, a lot of stuff that's shot on film, even if it's transferred to digital. There's a lot of directors that are still and we look at Christopher Nolan, I mean, he's just dedicated to running film, and then there was that other film, I can't remember the name of it, that I think Tom Ford made, where he just found a bunch of film stock.
Single Man? I think that might have been shot on film.
And he found this film stock in a garage in Europe somewhere.
Really?
So it was original vintage stock. And that's why it looks so amazing. The film glistens because it's this old antique stock.
It makes so much sense. I didn't know that. I mean, for any kind of film buff, the chance to see a film in its natural format, it's great to see a Lawrence of Arabia on a digital restoration, but seeing it on 70mm on film is transcendental comparison.
And I think that's the thing with 70mm. It's a step up again. It's in between IMAX and 35, and where digital was to try and take over from 35mm film, it still can't really compare to 70. And when you run something like Lawrence of Arabia, and you can see the grains of sand in the desert if you get close enough, it's just it's something to behold, I think.
I have one last question. If there were 3 films that you would recommend to our listeners that they have to see in film, what would they be?
Mine are going to be a bit out there. I'd say Eraserhead. I'd say Holy Mountain. And let's say Clockwork Orange. And all of them we have here on print, so if you...
You've got a print of the Holy Mountain?
Yes.
Bloody hell! You want to protect that with your life?
And we've got heaps of... We'll go and have a look. I'll show you the entire stash now if you'd like.
Thank you so much again, Chris. Cheers.
Welcome.